At my sister's wedding, they forgot my seat and humiliated me. So I took back my $10,000 gift and left. The whole room went silent, until she came running after me in her dress. Hey, I'm Nathan, 28 years old. If you'd asked me a year ago, I'd have said my sister Jenna and I were pretty tight. Not like besties or anything, but we had a quiet understanding. Growing up in a house where our parents barely tolerated each other, we learned to lean on each other quietly. Jenna's 2 years younger, the outgoing one with all the friends, while I was the quieter tech guy, fixing Wi-Fi, rescuing her from car troubles, and helping her move into pricey apartments she couldn't really afford. I never expected a thank you or anything, but I also didn't expect what happened next. Jenna and her husband Tyler had been planning their wedding for over a year, and they loved making everything into a big photo op. They had matching flannel engagement photos, over-the-top proposal parties, and even live-streamed "Will You Be My Bridesmaid?" brunches. I saw it all happening from a distance, included but not really part of the core group. I was the one behind the camera, carrying bags, and fixing lighting. I kept telling myself, it's her time to shine. So, when she asked me for some financial help with the wedding, I was a bit taken aback. Not because I couldn't afford it, I had a decent tech job, and our family wasn't exactly rolling in money, but more because of how she just assumed I would. She called me in spring and said, "Nate, it's a lot, but if you could cover the venue deposit, it'd mean so much. Just until Tyler's bonus clears." I sent over $10,000 2 days later, no drama, just a note saying, "Congrats, you deserve the best." Then, as the wedding plans unfolded, the money was never mentioned again. Not when the save the dates went out, not when I wasn't invited to the tux fitting, not even when I realized I was the only sibling not in the wedding party. I figured maybe they were keeping it small, but Instagram told a different story. 10 groomsmen, 8 bridesmaids, even Jenna's college roommate's fiancé had a role. It stung, but I kept quiet. My mom would have called me dramatic, and my dad would have just shrugged it off. As the wedding weekend came up, I kept my head down and took care of my own stuff, booked a flight, took time off work, even upgraded my hotel suite so I wouldn't have to rely on anyone else. The night before the wedding, I offered to help set up, but Jenna said, "We've got a planner," and Tyler added, "See you tomorrow, big guy," a bit too cheerily. I showed up at the venue the next day, all dressed up, with a black envelope containing the actual wedding gift, a $10,000 check. I figured if the deposit was never mentioned, I'd make that my gift. The reception was stunning, filled with white orchids and crystal glassware, but I couldn't find my place card. After checking the tables, I asked a staff member, who said I wasn't listed for a seat. Tyler's mom Sandra, with her fake warmth, said, "Oh Nathan, we assumed you'd be busy helping out." Jenna added, "You're more comfortable in the background, we didn't want you to feel out of place." Looking around, I saw so many people seated, even Jenna's yoga instructor. My ears were ringing, and I felt too stunned to speak. Sandra added condescendingly, "There's always standing room at the bar, dear, that's where the fun is." Something in me snapped. I walked to the gift table, picked up my sleek black envelope, and turned to face the room. I didn't shout, but in a steady voice, I said, "Didn't realize a $10,000 check only got you standing room." So, there's me thinking I'm just going to a wedding, but it turns into this awkward scene straight out of a movie. Seriously, you could have heard a pin drop. Glasses froze mid-sip, and one of the bridesmaids looked like she forgot how to drink her mimosa. I just turned around and walked out, still holding the envelopes. As I got to the main doors, I heard someone rushing after me, heels clacking like crazy. It was Jenna, all dressed up, out of breath, and her veil a bit askew. She grabbed my arm in a way that reminded me of when we were kids, and she used to sneak Pop-Tarts into my backpack because I skipped breakfast again. For a moment, the whole fancy bride thing slipped away, and she was just Jenna, my sister. She caught her breath and said, "Nathan, can we talk about this?" I raised an eyebrow, like, "Really, on your wedding day? Weren't you busy not noticing I didn't have a seat?" She winced but quickly said something about a mix-up, blaming it on the planner. But I'd already heard from her fiancé's mom that they thought I'd be more comfortable in the background. Holding the envelope, I asked, "Did you tell her that?" She blinked and finally confessed in this tiny voice, "I didn't think you'd mind." There it was, the casual cruelty cloaked as thoughtlessness, like it's my fault for not wanting the spotlight, which apparently justified erasing me completely. That one sentence kept echoing in my head. I stepped back. "You didn't think I'd mind being treated like a gatecrasher at your wedding after I bankrolled a big chunk of it?" Her eyes went wide. "Wait, what do you mean?" I paused. "The deposit, Jenna. The one you asked for because Tyler's bonus hadn't come through yet. You never paid it back, so I thought we were folding it into my wedding gift, which is why I brought this. I waved the envelope. But clearly, I was wrong. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off, saying I didn't need a seat at the head table or a speech. All I wanted was a chair, just a little space to be there, and even that was too much. She said softly, "I didn't mean to hurt you," her voice cracking a bit. I replied, "Yeah, but you didn't care enough not to." Behind her, music and laughter from the reception floated out, glasses clinking, people calling for group photos, all without me. The family I'd been quietly supporting for years acted like I was optional. She looked down, biting her lip. "If you just come back, I'll make it right. I'll get another chair." I told her, "A chair isn't the issue, Jenna. It's about respect. After 28 years, I've learned that just being reliable doesn't mean people will value you. They'll just keep taking until there's nothing left." She looked like she might cry, but I was done. I didn't want tears or last-minute guilt trips. So, I turned and headed to the valet, hearing her call, "Nate, please," but I didn't stop. Not even when the valet asked, "Leaving already, sir?" I just said, "Yeah," slipping the envelope into my jacket. Turns out, I wasn't invited. I drove off, ignoring my buzzing phone, missed calls from my mom, a text from my cousin Emily asking, "What happened?" I didn't even check the family group chat. I just went back to my hotel, ordered room service, and poured myself a drink. Around 11:45 p.m., I finally checked my texts. There was one from Jenna, just a single line, "Please don't tell mom and dad about the money. Tyler doesn't know you paid the deposit." I stared at it. No apology, no taking responsibility, just worry about the fallout. That's when I knew the quiet acceptance had to end. The next morning, I skipped the family brunch. Didn't reply to Jenna's message or my parents' calls. Instead, I headed to the airport, caught an earlier flight, and spent the week going through every financial arrangement I'd made for the family, utility bills, insurance, even the emergency credit card in my name. I put everything in a spreadsheet, totaled it up, and made a choice. I wasn't just walking away quietly this time. On the flight home, I felt clear-headed for the first time in years. I wasn't second-guessing myself, wondering if I was being too sensitive or dramatic. I had receipts, both literal and emotional, and I was done pretending my generosity was a never-ending well for them to tap without a word of thanks. So, there I was in my hotel room, starting up this spreadsheet that turned into a bit of a personal audit. I went all in, checked every bank app, dug through every email with an invoice, and went over every shared bill I'd been a part of for the past 5 years. That's when it hit me, I'd been quietly taking on a lot more than I realized. It all started small, like covering Dad's car insurance when he got laid off for a while, and then somehow, I found myself still paying for Jin's last semester of college because my parents said they were out of cash. Oh, and then there was that family vacation I funded because everyone promised they'd Venmo me back. Spoiler, they didn't. I used to brush it off, telling myself that family needs you sometimes and that's just what you do. But there's a line between helping out and being taken for granted, and my family had definitely crossed it, treating me like their personal ATM without even realizing it, or caring, really. The last straw? I found a charge from 2 weeks ago, $194.85 for a catered bridal lunch at some trendy bistro near Jenna's apartment. I wasn't invited, wasn't told about it, but yup, I footed the bill with the shared card Mom still used. That card had covered everything from emergency dentist visits to Uber rides when her car battery died again. Surprisingly, I didn't get mad, just smiled and got to work. Over the next few days, I quietly revoked all secondary users on my credit cards, froze the emergency account, and even called the bank to remove myself as a guarantor on Dad's car loan. I changed up the login info for all those family utility accounts, electricity, water, gas, the cell phone family plan, you name it. Then, right at 7 a.m. on Monday, when I knew Mom would be making her morning coffee, I scheduled each service to cut off that afternoon. I wanted to make some noise. Around 2:30 p.m., Dad texted about the internet going down, assuming I'd forgotten to pay again. I left him hanging. By 3 o'clock, Mom had called twice, leaving a voicemail sounding all puzzled about the power and water being out. I listened to it while having lunch, totally chill. Jenna chimed in around 3:42, wondering what was up and why Mom was freaking out. I stayed quiet. But when she messaged again at 4:16, accusing me of canceling the bills, I actually laughed. Oh, now it was serious? By dinner time, the group chat was on fire. Mom was calling me immature, Dad was giving the whole "you're better than this" speech, and Jenna was trying to explain away her snubs. That's when I finally dropped a bombshell. I copied the $63,842 total from my spreadsheet, sent it to the chat with a simple note, That's what I've paid for this family in the last 5 years. Itemized receipts available upon request. And I added, you don't get to ignore someone until they're useful. That card's maxed out. Silence followed for 3 hours. Finally, Jenna replied, admitting she didn't realize it was that much and asked if we could talk. I almost said yes. But then I remembered how her mother-in-law had dissed me at the wedding, and Jenna just stood there. So, I hit her back with, I think we've talked enough. I'll send my Venmo in case you want to start paying back your tab. Until then, enjoy married life. Then, I muted the chat, blocked Jenna, and for the first time, enjoyed the silence not as something I had to endure but something I chose. In no time, my family's carefully crafted facade started to crumble, and they came running, not out of love or regret, but because they realized the convenience was gone. Cutting off people you've been silently supporting felt like slicing away parts of myself, but also like a breath of fresh air. Day 2 started with a knock on my door. Unannounced visitors are rare in my quiet neighborhood. It was Dad, looking worn out, folder in hand, asking if we could talk. I let him in, not because I owed him, but to see if he had the guts to fix what he helped break. He sat there at my kitchen table, like it was the most important interview of his life. I sat there, flipping open a folder and spreading out a bunch of bills, notes, and even some half-baked repayment plans. It would have seemed impressive, except I was the one who paid most of those bills anyway. I didn't realize how much you were dealing with, my dad said. Your mom and I got used to thinking you'd always help. I nodded, a bit annoyed. Yeah, you got used to taking me for granted. He looked a bit hurt but didn't argue. Instead, he poked at one of the repayment plans with a tired finger. I want to pay you back. It won't be quick, but I'll start this month. I've got some retirement funds I can dip into early. That caught me off guard because self-sacrifice wasn't exactly my dad's thing since, like, the early 2000s. I glanced at the paper, then back at him. Why now? I asked. He hesitated. Because I saw how Jenna looked at you at the wedding. Like you didn't matter. Like you were just there. He looked down. That used to be my mistake. I don't want it to be hers. For the first time in ages, I saw the guy who used to carry me on his shoulders during 4th of July parades. I nodded slowly. If you're serious, start by covering the car insurance for the rest of the year. Then we'll talk. He seemed relieved. Fair enough. After he left, I didn't cry or vent. I just sat there, soaking in the quiet, realizing what it felt like to finally be heard, not because I shouted, but because I stopped talking entirely. Then, a couple of days later, I found a handwritten letter from Jenna slipped under my door. She had been by and chose not to ring the bell. Her familiar loopy handwriting had my name on it. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won out. It said, Nate, I've tried calling and texting. I know you're not ready to talk. I don't blame you. I've replayed the day over and over, trying to figure out what went wrong, and honestly, it didn't happen on the wedding day. It happened way before. You were always there for me, rides, rent, bad dates, everything. I always thought you'd be there, and that was my biggest mistake, never asking, never appreciating, just assuming. Tyler didn't know you paid the deposit. I never told him because I didn't want him to feel like we owed anyone. I wanted us to look like we had it together, like we'd earned it all, but that lie cost me your trust, and I see it now. I always thought you liked staying in the background, thought you were low maintenance, but I never once asked how you felt. I never thought about what it felt like to sit through that wedding knowing you paid for it and were treated like a piece of furniture. You didn't deserve that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now. It wasn't dramatic or groveling, but it felt real, and that made it tougher. For a week, I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because I needed to make sure this wasn't another temporary family panic moment where they say the right things just to patch things up. I waited and watched. Then I got an email, a digital receipt showing $10,000 had been transferred directly to my bank from Jenna. No message, just the transaction. Then another email from Tyler with the subject, apology. The body said, Nate, I just learned the full story. I'm sorry. That's all I can say for now, but we're starting our marriage by making things right. You deserved better. Hope to prove that moving forward. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I sent one last message in the group chat, no more payments, no more favors. If you want me in your life, treat me like I matter, not like a backup plan. This time, I mean it. Then I left the chat. I didn't block them again, just left. 2 months later, my birthday rolled around. I didn't plan a big party or send out reminders. I just made a reservation for one at a rooftop sushi spot I'd always wanted to try and gazed at the city lights below. Midway through my meal, the waiter brought over a small box. Inside was a note, from someone who finally sees you. Happy birthday. It was from Jenna. I smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because for once I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just background noise. I was seen. And I knew that from now on, I wouldn't let myself fade into the background for anyone, not for family, blood, or even love. I had learned the hard way that being dependable doesn't mean I owe them my silence, it means I've earned my boundaries, and I finally had them. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet,